Hello, hello. Looks like all the names with a C were first in row. Celia, Corlia, Carita. I'm just going to give a few minutes for everybody to join. I hope you guys have some pen and paper and tea. All the pings you guys are possibly hearing is just the participants joining. So just to give them all a minute to join. I just want you to ask you all to also mute yourselves if you enter, if you can, just to make sure that if you have background noises that it's all muted and we don't interrupt. Hello, hello. This is so exciting. I feel like I'm at the casino with all the little pings and the I don't know if you guys can hear the little pings every time somebody's joining, but we're just giving a moment for everybody to join. I'm not going to wait too long, just a minute or two to honor you guys who are on time. But it's so lovely to have you all here. I know there's quite a few South Africans, so I'm sorry this is in English if you're Afrikaans, but I'm hoping that everybody can follow. Perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to take a moment to see all your beautiful faces, and I hope that you all have a nice cup of tea or coffee or beverage of your choice and a pen and a paper that you can get comfortable and really settle into our talk. And then at the top right hand screen you'll see a little button that says view, and you can change the way it looks. So for me, I've got it as gallery, so I can see all your faces, but you get speaker view, you get immersive. So there's different ways you can choose to have a look at it so that you can make it more comfortable for yourself. I remember when we started with online work in the pandemic, I literally had a scarf like hanging over the camera because it was just so awkward to look at myself all day and have these sessions like this. So I don't know how many of you have adjusted to this online life, and it's quite normal now or easy to have these Zoom conversations. Fabulous. I think that is all of us. Whoever joins can join while we go, but to honor the time and to honor all of you that's here, we can jump right in. Oh, it's so incredible to be entrusted with this process, and that you're all here to explore the soul body mind connection. And I'm really excited that you are all here and that we can learn from each other in the process. I do have a Carita, I'm just going to ask that you stay muted so that if you're going to talk, that we can mute you, but otherwise that you stay muted. If everybody can stay muted, that way the background noises. Sorry, there's a few more people joining. I just wanted to quickly let them in. Okay, let's get started. I have been doing online for quite a while, but not the whole presentation, having one-on-one sessions and things. So please bear with me if I'm not flowing as smoothly with this as I would like to. But Let's do this. Just a quick rough summary of how the structure is going to work tonight. We're going to have, well, tonight here in South Africa, afternoon in America. So we're going to start with a welcome, setting our intention. We're going to explore the soul and the spirit and my story. And then we've got a little exercise and conclusion. So it's very roughly summarized in what to expect. But first of all, what I really want you each to do is take a moment to congratulate yourselves, because you being here already sets the intention of the growth that you want in your life, of the expansion that you're after. You taking the time is so precious, and I really hope that you can take a moment and just congratulate yourself for committing to this process and the time that you're here to be able to expand your awareness and growth. I just want to check. Carita, yours keeps going unmuted. You can just make sure yours stays muted. I've just muted you again, but if you can just keep it there, for some reason it pops off. Perfect. I must be really honest, like talking about God and spirituality is a very vulnerable subject. It's not something people are even recommended, you don't talk about it at the dinner table because it can be so contentious. So I don't want to start a debate in my talk tonight at all. That's not the purpose. I want it to be a really safe space for all of us that are present. And if our beliefs don't match, rather let's have a private discussion than disrupt the feeling of it. So debates are usually about right or wrong. This is right, this is wrong, you're wrong, you're right. But a conversation is an opening up the discussion, a sharing of ideas and a sharing of thoughts. And I know that some people feel more comfortable. They've been hurt by religion and they don't feel comfortable with God, and they call it universe and source. There's no judgment. This is for each their own. I refer to God as a spiritual Christian, but I have absolutely no judgment and want you to feel comfortable and welcome in this space with whatever format you prefer. I know that the traditional Christianity has hurt many people, and so by sharing my beliefs and outlook, I hope that it resonates with you too, but you're very welcome to decide what works for you and what doesn't. Before we dive in, I always like to start with our intentions. So we're going to be setting our intentions today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And what I love about intentions is it sets our focus. If we go anywhere and we have an intention of what we want to get from that experience, it helps our brain to pick up what we want from that time. So it focuses us, it gets the brain on board on what we want to get from the session. So I would love you all to take a moment to just set your intention for your time here. What would you like to get out of your time here? I want to really make sure that this intention, there's a time for intentional intention, so that you can make sure your focus is on what you want to get out of the session. And when you set an intention, I feel it takes you from being just a passive listener, like just absorbing information or sitting there, to an active participant. And it helps you to go from just information overload to actually transformation. I've written my intention there, but from my heart, what I want to really just share of why this course was born is, for me, there's so much in the world. There's so much going on in the world that is overwhelming and exhausting and scary. And I feel that a big part of that is because we live from our mind alone. We've cut off from our bodies. We've become closed off to the sensations because our body gets in the way, and our spirit is something we access on Sundays, if at all. So we've got all this pressure on our mind, and it's led to so much disconnect and loneliness and pain and suffering. So this call for me is about creating the safe space where we can explore how to live in union with our soul, our body, and our mind. So my intention for today is to bring some hope and light back into spirituality and understanding for us. You're welcome to either share your intentions in the chat, or you can just write it down on your notes, or you can, say it out loud if you want to speak about it, whatever it is, but just to have a moment to get clear on your intention of why you want to be here and what you want to get out of your time here. I do have notes, which is very odd for me because I go with what flows, but there was so much flowing into me over the weekend that I didn't want to miss anything. So I've got pages of notes. So I will be looking down just to make sure we stay on track and that I get to share with you what's been shared with me. So, very honest truth, when I was preparing for this talk, I was completely naive and I had no idea. I did not realize that the soul and spirit were two different things. For me, when I think soul, body, mind, I've always thought soul and spirit was the same thing. And having a big discussion, some of you might know my dad, Francois du Toit, he's from the Mirror Bible, and like he's translated the Bible from the original Hebrew and Greek texts, and there's so much beauty in that. But anyway, having these discussions, and I realized just how much I was missing by thinking soul and spirit is the same. But I'd already planned this talk before I knew that. So for the purpose of this talk, I will be talking about soul and spirit as the same thing. But in traditional text, in traditional understanding, one would often talk about soul, body, spirit. And the soul and spirit are two separate things. And the soul in that context is more seen as your mind, like I would be using mind now. So it's our identity, our perceived persona that we've accumulated of us. Then the body is the biology, the flesh that we are, and the spirit is our source, our resonance with God, our source energy from God. So that's the traditional sense. And for the context of my talk, I'm going to be talking about soul, body, mind, but the soul meaning spirit. So I'll interchange the words, but for me, when I talk about soul, it's about the spirit. It's about our source energy from God, our peace of God, our Holy Spirit that's within us, that creates us and gives us life. And then when I talk about the body, for me, it's about our connection with our heart and connection with our emotions. And our body is an intimate lover that loves us unconditionally, which we'll go much more into in day 2. And then our mind is our perceived identity, our ego, our survival responses, our habits, those things, which we'll also discuss more in day 3. And they will be covering some hacks and understandings of how our subconscious works and how our identity works and creating things like that. So I do apologize for any of you that are very accustomed to soul and spirit being two different things. I'm sorry for my ignorance, and I hope that it doesn't throw you off too much when I use soul and spirit interchangeably. Even though I know the difference now, I still find I catch myself saying soul when I mean spirit. And so I'm unlearning the process, but it's a bit of a process. There is a scripture in the Bible that says in Hebrews, for the word of God is alive and powerful. It's sharper than the sharpest two-edged sword, cutting between soul and spirit, between joint and marrow. It exposes our innermost thoughts and desires. And for me, that's really powerful in the sense that it explains that there is a difference between soul and spirit, just like there is between joint and marrow. So the soul, spirit, and body comes in that discussion as well. But the word of God is alive and powerful. And what I loved about that is the thought that you can talk and it can fall on deaf ears and nothing changes. You can have a conversation and you sort of hear it and it passes. And part of my intention for today's call is that this word resonates, just like a musician who who plays a chord to see if it's in tune, and the little sound box can pick up that frequency and resonate with it. I believe our spirit has the same capacity, that we can play that musical instrument, that we can hear the word of God, or that we can hear this spirit language and it strikes a chord within us and it resonates, and then we know the truth from there. So soul is meaning spirit. Just to check, I'm going to quickly have a look at the chats. I didn't want them open while we're talking, so I want to. So Catherine, thank you so much for sharing, and Karita is healing. And purpose. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. These are wonderful intentions, and I'm really excited because all of them are possible. If there are any questions that pop up Okay, here, Jane. You're a hungry teenager. I'm hoping to be done by 7. My husband is actually sitting in the car just when he's finished with work just now to make sure I get out of the place like safely, because it's evening here. So I told him 7. So I'm hoping 7. It might go a little bit over. My first day, I've got a lot to say, so it might go a bit over. But if he can hang out to 7, that would be awesome. And for anybody that needs to go the replay, you can watch the rest in the replay tomorrow. So we're going to hopefully go till 7. I'm happy to stay a bit longer if there's questions, and then whatever you miss, we can carry on with tomorrow. So my story. I want to share with you my story to give you a little bit of an idea of who I am and how I got here and how we got onto this discussion of, you know, this masterclass that I've created. If you'd asked me 20 years ago, like, would I be doing a public talk? There is absolutely no ways. Even 2 years ago, if you told me I would be the main speaker, and not to mention discussing something like God and spirituality, I really would not have believed you. I remember at school, we were in a small town, small classes. I knew everybody, but if I had to give a talk in front of the class, I would absolutely just freeze. There was not a word that would come out. Doesn't matter how much I practiced it, how good I knew the topic, how much my friends were cheering me on. It was be like a blank slate. I couldn't remember a thing, couldn't get a word out. So being here would have just, I would have probably laughed. And so here I am. But I also remember growing up, people in church saying that you have to surrender to God, and that meant doing things that you would never want to do, that you have to allow him to change you. And it kind of freaked me out. I was resistant, and I was even thinking like, well, then I don't want to surrender to God, because I don't, like, in my head I was thinking I have to sing on the streets, you know, and become a proclaim God everywhere from every corner, and it just did not resonate with me. And it made me really scared, because I was like, how can I do this? How can I show him I love him and have to do these things? That just feels so odd. And it took me a while, and I was thinking maybe I'm a bad Christian or a bad person, or like as a little girl playing with these ideas and just thinking, I don't want to change. I don't want to do that. But then developing a personal relationship with God as I grew up, and realizing, hang on, he made me. He made me, which means he gave me my desires and my dreams and my hopes and my personality and who I am. Like a lot of personality we learn, but the things that he imprinted on me, the desires of my heart, come from him. So why would he want to change that? And there was such relief in realizing that me changing to become that person I thought he would want would be against his desires too, because he imprinted me with the desires of my heart. And so it was this beautiful unfolding of realizing, hang on, I can be me and he still loves me. And it's so beautiful to just have that freedom of expression, that freedom and safety of being who you are, as being more than enough. So surrender, what I figured out later, is much more to do with trust. It's not about submission, it's about surrender, and surrender is trust. And my kids have been doing swimming lessons recently, and in that process, they have to lie back in the pool, and they were petrified. Like lie at the back, and the teacher's holding them, and they've got to just try and float there. And at the beginning, their hands were paddling, their feet were kicking, they would not, their neck was tense, they just would not lie there. But as the trust in the process grew and the teacher grew, they can now lie there in absolute bliss and actually just really enjoy it. They don't have to resist, they don't have to kick, they don't have to do anything. They can just surrender, trusting that that water's got them. And for me, that's a lot of times our relationship with God. Like, we can surrender, but we get stuck on how. How does this water keep me up? There's no ways the water, when I'm standing, it's not keeping me up. How's it going to keep me up when I'm lying on my back? And so surrendering is about trusting him, not worrying about the how. If you've got a desire, to follow that desire. But we often get so stuck on the how. We create these stories of how it must happen and how it can't happen and how impossible it is. And we lose track because we're focused on the how and not on the who. The who that created those desires and that has our back in those desires. So it's all about getting excited about desires and letting go of the how, and instead letting him guide me when I don't know the way, leaning into the stream and enjoying the ride, trusting that he knows me intimately and loves me as I am. And it's a beautiful place to be. So back to my story. All my life, I've really loved people. It's been an intimate journey of just watching people. There's such a beauty about every single soul that I meet that just entrances me, whether they see it in themselves yet or not. I also love nature, animals, outdoors, but I didn't know what I was good at. You know, school measures you according to your skills, and this didn't measure up. So I didn't really know what I was good at. And this didn't make me unhappy, just confused. It's felt a lot simpler for my friends and family who were good at stuff. The measurable stuff, for example, being good at art and becoming an artist, or being good at math and becoming an accountant, or being good at sports. You catch my drift. So I was very confused after school when it came time to choosing my degree. After much back and forth, I decided communication skills could be used in any career, so it's a safe bet. But in my first year of communication skills, psychology was one of the subjects, and I absolutely fell in love. I fell in love with understanding how much our brain affects our behavior, our relationships, and so many other aspects. And so I shifted from my communication degree into psychology. During my internship after my degrees, I worked at schools and in the process felt a deep desire to help children feel safe and understood. And so I started specializing and working as a play therapist, and I started my own play therapy practice. But lo and behold, the parents would come see me about their child, and I would notice that the parents aren't getting along. There's discord, there's resentment, there's bad communication. And I noticed the effect it was having on the children. So we would have these safe sessions and they'd go home and that environment would stay the same. And so I started helping the parents more and more. And in helping the parents, the children stopped needing to come to me. And so then I again took what I'd learned, put it aside, not put it all aside, I still use things from play therapy, but re-specialized again as a couples therapist. And that's what I've been focusing on for the last 10 years. But I didn't know that being good with people was a skill. And so it was this whole unfolding and developing across the studies and across my life until get into where I am here. And I was thinking about how sometimes we can window shop through life. We see others with the things we desire. We see them and we put them on a pedestal, or we separate ourselves from them, whether it's the house, the relationship, the family, the car, the career, whatever it is, the simplicity of their decision. But this creates a distance between us, and it's a longing, and it leaves us in lack. And unfortunately, what that does is it just marinates that feeling of it's not us, it's a damper. But when we realize that these people can be mirrors of us, that distance disappears. When we realize that these are all potentials, it stops becoming you've got this and I don't have this, and there's that space, like window shopping. But it becomes a mirror of, oh, imagine me in that car. Actually, no, I don't even like that car, but I would like. There's so much freedom and joy in being allowed to have desires. And I really feel that we have been programmed in a sense of just society and the way it's been, how we've been taught to believe that it is wrong to have pleasure, and it's right to surrender, to sacrifice, and to be suffering. That is a humble trait, and I'm here to turn that all upside down. So I hope that you have the openness to hear the journey as we go. And tomorrow is going to be a lot more about pleasure, but pleasure is such a beautiful state. And so when we see these people with these things that we desire, they're not examples to tease us, but they're examples of potential for us. If it resonates, there's a reason, and we get lost on how would I ever get that? There's no ways I could ever get that. And we take the miracle out of living. The Israelites lived for 40 years in the desert, being rescued, but yet they believed themselves separate to the miracles they saw every day, every single day. In the desert, they were provided with miracles, but they saw it as an external God's power and not the power he had given them. And so they perished without ever seeing their true potential. Jesus came, my dad often says this, as an example of us, not for us. There's no distance in his presence. Yahweh, the original Hebrew word, the name for God, is comes from the breath sounds that we make. It's the inhale and the exhale, meaning he's closer than our next breath. There is no separation. So how does this relate to what we're doing here today? I want you all to know that our journey is often different to what we planned out. The journey we plan out is us doing the hows. And I want you all to give yourself permission to spend more time desiring things. It's not a threat. It's not a risk. But when we spend time desiring things and leaning back and surrendering to God, we allow him to help us find the way to where we want to go. So our journey is often different to how we plan it out. My journey was started here and it like ended there. It was way different than what I ever thought. And I'm so grateful for the journey because the tools I learned all along the process, every part of it has helped me, helping my clients and relating to them, in understanding them, in the approaches that I used, from the communication skills, working with couples, play therapy, helping parents as couples, all of them added to where I am now. And I'm so grateful for where I am. Don't let the how do I get there get in the way of where you're going. The second part of the reason I brought the story up is we often go to therapy, we see psychologists. I've been to therapy for many years. I give therapy. And what I've noticed is in all my degrees, we focused on the brain. I mean, psych, mind, mental state, it's about your brain. But our whole body is part of our healing. Our whole body is part of our human experience. Our bodies carry our emotions, our nervous system, everything is so intricately involved. And so when you do therapy, if you go see a therapist, if you're working with somebody to find out how body aware they are, what somatic work they do, to help you in that process, that it becomes integrated and not just more mental load on your very exhausted mind. And then what I really believe is that when we get to live as spirit, body, and mind, it's a superpower. It's not skimming through and survival. We get to live like we were designed to live. I was very shocked when I read this, but it does make sense. The other day I saw, they said that the average adult, it was Dr. Will Cole on his Instagram account, the average adult today has the same level of anxiety as the average psychiatric patient had in the 1950s. We are sitting with a crisis of next level proportions with mental illness. British wrote their mental ill health. There's too much pressure on performance-based expectations. This disease, it's a disconnect from our bodies. We try and just push through. How many times have you gone on holiday and then gotten sick there because you've been suppressing your system and just driving through, regardless of the signals from our body? Our body is talking to us all the time and we ignore it when we're so focused on the how and what we have to do and living by society's rules. I believe a lot of our loneliness stems from the disconnect from our spirit and our body, and the greed, the things that make us scared of pleasure, money, all of those things. What we see as greed is because of that insatiable hunger. I've worked with CEOs, owners of big companies, and they've got all the money that they could ever imagine, and they're still so lonely and so hungry for life. They don't understand why that house, that car, that boat, that income didn't create that. And those things you're welcome to go for, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, we're all for pleasure, but realizing that hunger comes from living part life and not fully connected to all that we are. It's really beautiful when the original Latin word for educate means to draw out. It's not about putting in school, the education system. They see us as empty and needing to be filled up, and it's so outdated. The original Latin means to draw out, and yet we see God in fulfillment on the outside all the time. We look for God in the church, in the books. It's nothing wrong with, finding resonance there, but we very rarely come home within. So these are just some other words that I really like, that I find powerful to understand. When the Bible talks about righteousness, the original Hebrew means likeness of being. It's not about our performance-based behavior, how good we can be. Hades, which is the word for hell, is to not see. And then one of the scriptures that I found, that I used to find, I'm finding it easier and easier, but what I really struggled with growing up was, I will no longer judge any man from a human point of view. And that was for me just such a wow, because it's so human to judge somebody. And I mean, we take mental shortcuts and we assume things, but how important it is to not see people from a human perspective. Are you all okay and with me? Let's see if I can see a bit more faces while I'm. So when you look in the mirror, you see a reflection of yourself. And generally, when we look in the mirror, we're judging it. We're seeing our reflection based on our interpretation of ourselves. And most of us stop there. We see it as, oh, I don't look so nice, or this is wrong, or this is wrong, or I don't like that, or okay, this looks fine. But when we've tapped into our spirit, you can look and see your body and love it, whether there's a pimple or wrinkles or dark eyes, it doesn't matter, because you see beyond the physical and you understand what your physical body does and means to you as well. So it becomes deeper, and it almost like you look in blurry, and it becomes so beautiful as you see the eternal being within you with no blemish. You have a gift of life. And I feel that so many of us, the ugly duckling, for those of you on my Facebook, you've probably seen me talk about the ugly duckling. It's one of my favorite stories, because as a counselor and seeing clients, one of the most common things I see is the story of the ugly duckling. You know, being born in not the wrong nest, but for the ugly duckling, it was in the wrong nest, and it was surrounded by ducks. And so I started believing it was a duck. And I could imagine it really wanted to fit in, but it was being teased. You know, you look so different. You're so much bigger. You quack different. Your legs are different. You know, your neck is looking different. And the more it grew and the more it changed, the more I could imagine it like trying to get smaller, pull its neck in, quack different. And the more it did that, the more it would fall over, squish his brother or sister and get into trouble, reinforcing that belief that there's something wrong with it. And so many people that I know grow up believing the lies. Oh, you're so, lazy, or you're so slow, or you're not clever enough, or you're not good enough, or you're so selfish, or these labels that they hear growing up, and they believe this is me. And that duckling had to look in the water and see its reflection. Didn't have to go for lessons, but it had to see who it really is. And the moment it saw that, it could let go of the past, it could let go of the lies. And that's where the scripture, like the part that I talked about, the window shopping, like realizing that we are not here and looking at other people that are doing these amazing things. We are that swan. We've been that swan all along. Unfortunately, most people can live their whole lives thinking they're the ugly duckling and never getting to that reflection of seeing while they're living who they really are. What I find that we've been taught through many churches, through society, through life, is that people are inherently bad, needing to be saved. We've been taught that the mind is king, should be cherished above all else. The body is a distraction. I mean, headaches and backaches are bad for the economy. They don't want you to feel sick and not come to work. So get over it, take an aspirin, come to work. And that the soul is salvageable if you're good enough, if you do enough, if you perform enough. And it's beliefs like that that manifest a society like the society that we're living in, where there's so much loneliness and despair. These are just some of the scriptures that came to mind of just God's view of us. He created us in his image and likeness. He says, with whom I am well pleased. You are my masterpiece. Return to your rest, for I have dealt bountifully with you. My work is perfect. Every good and perfect thing comes from above. Most of us spend our life trying to get to heaven, forgetting that that's where we came from in the first place. God has made home in you. Seek first the kingdom and his righteousness. His righteousness is our likeness of being. Seek his kingdom, and then realize that we are like him, and realizing that we're like him means that kingdom is ours as well. So when we live according to society's view of we're inherently wrong and we need to perform to get better, to be fixed, to be saved, we live disconnected to our soul. We live according to rules. But when we change that point of view and we see what God sees when he looks at you, what your spirit knows, it's a beautiful revelation, because I think that most people are petrified that if we don't have fear and threat and condemnation, there will be anarchy. And the thing is that people create anarchy. You know, my kid, there was somebody that said something really mean to him at school. And the only thing I could think of saying to him was, well, not the only thing I think, but the thing that really stuck out that I said to him was just that happy people don't hurt people. We've got that anarchy. We've got all those things going on. And it's from the state of thinking we're evil, we're bad, we're mean, and we've got to try and our best with the best willpower to become better. But when we see ourselves as who we are, as who we made us, as this connection, as soul, he's not intimidated, not in the least. God is not intimidated by us. He sees our spirit. He sees who you are, and there is no blemish. I think of the parable of the lost son. I mean, this kid went out, he squandered his money, he slept with prostitutes, he landed up with, you know, in the pigsty. There was nothing good about his behavior, if you could put it that way. And yet, when he came home, his dad stood with arms wide open, longing to see him, longing to welcome him back. And if a human can do that, how much more our Father God? That distance, the rules, it wouldn't hurt so much if it was true. We are not humans with occasional spiritual access, or some people that are blessed with having the spiritual insights, and the rest of us are just, well, trying to make it. We are spiritual beings from the get-go. We are spirit having a human experience, and the human experience is not a punishment. It's not a threat. It's not something we have to test and pass and fail and try again. We are spirits having a human experience. I don't know, like everybody comes from different backgrounds here, but I know there's a lot of talk about law of attraction, manifestation, law of polarity, all the laws of the universe. And I think there's a lot of truth and a lot of, beautiful insights into these laws. But the one thing that I do feel like there's science behind it and all the rest, but one of the things I do feel that's missing there is grace. God says his grace is sufficient for us. And for me, I just want to make sure I read it properly, because this was really powerful when I downloaded it. His grace is sufficient. You can have a negative mindset your whole life, had the most traumatic childhood, and it changes in an instant when you discover that reflection of who you are. That didn't take years and years of positive thinking, of being that next level swan, of imagining yourself as that swan so that you can vibrate accordingly and have that frequency and get to be that swan. You don't need years of positive thinking before your life can change. And grace even throws traditional ideas of karma out the window, because remember, if you have to earn grace, it's not grace. If you have to earn your Christmas present, it's not a gift. Grace is unmerited favor. Personally, I even believe that God doesn't need grace because he doesn't see something he needs to forgive in us. I think it's rules again that we've created, things that we need to feel better about ourselves. But God sees us intimately. And that's the biggest thing that I want to leave with you guys. And we're not ending right now, but the biggest thing I want to leave from this is that God doesn't see the superficial. He doesn't see what we put up in front of others. He doesn't see just, what we see in the mirror. He doesn't see how we just the superficial of our living. He sees us deeply. And he loves what he sees. He desires an intimate relationship with you. It struck me the other day, it doesn't matter how long a room has been dark. When you put the light on, the dark instantly disappears. And we aren't afraid of the dark. We're afraid of what's lurking in the dark. Discovering the light within ourselves not only gives us instant enlightenment, but it shows us the shadows that we were scared of were just doubt and lies. We are spirit breathed out of a desire of God to experience life through our unique perceptions and to have an intimate relationship with God. How much more permission do you need to be yourself? Check us see this chat. Any questions or thoughts or things you want to share? I'd love to hear from you. The shadow, I've got to be, because there's a question, what do you think of all the effort to work on our shadows? And there is a lot of practice where people will say we do shadow work, we've got to get rid of our shadows. I think that people call different things different names. And I do believe that, and I've got it here, that healing is important. Shadow work makes it feel to me that it's evil. And if we look at Hades, the word for hell, it means to not see. And so for me, I believe a lot of us live in hell daily. We don't see who we are. We don't see our potential. We don't see who made us. And our shadow work for me sounds like there's evil parts of us. And like in the work that I've done with clients over the last 10 plus years, every single bad behavior was an effort to soothe them, to help them cope with the pain. Even depression has been an attempt at, I can't feel this anymore. Please help it stop. There hasn't been a shadow trying to be evil and vindictive, but it's been a coping strategy or a learned behavior or response to a childhood that we grew up with. And so when we start having grace with ourselves and understanding, people that have even been drinking too much and things like that, it's been a trying to cope with an over, stimulated nervous system and without knowing who they are and all these things. So for me, shadow work sounds like there's an evil side to us or a wrong side to us. And in my experience, it's been misunderstood or hidden parts of ourselves. For me, and with the body work, which we'll do tomorrow, an example I often use is that if you step on a burning coal, you don't try and go, oh, this is really sore, I wonder what it is. You first lift your foot and then you do the next steps. And our body gives us a message, instantly lift your foot. It tells you to lift your foot, except it doesn't use the words lift your foot, but we know that's what it says. And we stop those conversations with our bodies and they get louder and louder and louder until it gets our attention. But that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Yes, thank you. Any other questions? And Dr. Erin, just let me know if that does cover it. Demons, I'm going to say it up front, I don't know enough to really go into it. It's not my expertise. I do believe that we preach the devil back into business way too much. We give it way too much credit for too many things that go on in our lives. And I'm trying not to jump ahead, but it's also interrelated. When we talk about the mind on day 3, we're going to be talking about how our brain cannot do the don'ts. So if we say, don't think of an elephant, it has to think of an elephant to know what not to think about. And we spend a lot of time thinking of what we don't want to be. I don't want to get possessed. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to do this. And yet our brain has to think of those things to create the image of what we don't want. And so we go into exactly what we didn't want. Demons, I don't think I know enough to be able to say without a doubt there isn't or anything like that. I just believe that we, if we have to go into Christianity and Jesus going to hell and back, and like the hell and back in the sense of he's gone wherever we needed to go to save us. We are his. There's no, I believe a lot of the things people created to create, let's put it this way, a lot of what people believe about religion, I can often translate into the house we grew up in, the way we got parented. There's a lot of guilt and condemnation, and you're wrong and you're bad and you've got to try and repent, and it's easy to believe a God that would be like that. But if we get seen as these amazing kids with innate knowledge and this beautiful thirst for life that you get to nourish and nurture, and no, I'm not saying that, there's a difference between permissive parenting and passive parenting and positive parenting. Permissive parenting is passive, it's not participating, whereas positive parenting is realizing that there's so much potential in them, and we're not creating mini-me's, but we're allowing them to blossom as themselves. Okay. Oh, let's see if I can get us back. Okay, so exercises that I like to deepen my spiritual awareness and awakening. What I do want to say, though, is that what we tend to do is we start our day with, and we end our day with, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't get to this, I should have written to that person, I wish I didn't scream at the kids, and I really wish I didn't do it. And we start our days with, oh my goodness, the kids, the school, the go, go, go. And the biggest shift I found in my own life is when we started with soul, when we started with spirit. Everything else can wait. This doesn't mean it's another rule that we have to follow, that we have to do. But the privilege we get from the insights from starting your day from your spirit, which sees all and experiences all, is such a game changer to starting your day with the lists and the demands in the house. I'm not saying like I get it right every day. My kids have been sick recently. You wake up, there isn't that chance to meditate. But generally, I get up between 4:30 and 5 because I love that time to myself, where I get to, some days I meditate, some days I walk, some days I put on music, some days I dance. It's different, but it's a time to reconnect inside before the world outside takes over. So that grounds us and elevates us, because we feel a lot more secure and safe knowing, hang on a second, what does God think about this? What does my soul know about this? He's not worried about this talk tonight. Okay. So hand on the heart for me. When we touch part of our body, our focus goes there, and our heart is such a center for me. We've got our thymus gland, which is part of our stress response. So just above your heart, putting your hand there, bringing your attention to your heart, to your body, and just exactly that. I literally tell myself, what does my spirit know to be true? Is my spirit worried about this? You can look at all these Bible scriptures of being in the lion's den and being swallowed by a whale and all these bizarre stories. And yet we limit ourselves and like, oh no, there's no ways I'll have enough money to pay my rent at the end of the month. But it's such a small problem. Our spirit is not worried about that at all. So I love time to reflect. It was just quite interesting. I was invited to a private school to do a talk there about social media usage and for the teenagers. And one of the things that I read while I was preparing for this was about how one of the biggest problems we're facing at the moment is when we're reflecting, our empathy grows. And I was thinking about how we, like, cell phones only came out after I finished school. That's how old I am. So when I got home from school, it would be throw your bag on the floor, lie on the bed, and you think about the day. It would be like, oh, that person was so mean to so-and-so, or I was a little bit mean to so-and-so, or I really enjoyed the way that person spoke to so-and-so. That felt good. You think about the day and you develop empathy and social skills from there, because you're spending time thinking about how your actions and others' actions affected those around you. And what happens today is they're not even home from school yet and these are out. They close their eyes with these on. They're going from one world into another. There's no reflection happening. And so reflection is really important, not to judge ourselves, but we have an inner value system that guides us, and to be able to go into, I didn't like how I spoke to my husband today. I'm going to quickly go and say sorry. Or I didn't like what happened there, or just reflecting. So making sure there's time to reflect. Meditation for me is beautiful. And you'll see with all these examples that I put here, they're so interlinked. Like I was thinking, but I must put that with mind. No, I must put that with body. No, I must put this with spirit. They're all interlinked. It's such an intricate process. So all these beautiful exercises that we do are combining spirit, mind, and body. You hand on your heart, bringing focus to your physical body, brings your awareness out of your head and connects you to spirit. Reflection time is spending time in quiet waters. Meditation, silencing again the mind, bringing your awareness to what is into the present moment. Gratitude. Heart-brain coherence is spending some time, hands on your chest, breathing through your heart as if your heart is lungs. And when you're doing that, they said that your brain has electromagnetic activity, and your heart does as well. And when we bring our awareness to our breath, while we're focusing on that and doing that, we bring them in sync. Because our brain is shooting off on a million different tangents and all these different thoughts and beliefs. Our heart, our body center, our emotion center is also going off on this tangent, and they're operating. It's like two different magnets and electric fields going off, and they're clashing and they're not working in sync. But when we do that, when we bring them together, the studies that I've read say that there is such a massive increase within 5 days just of your immunity. Your body's immune system is so improved. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was shocking to see how it physically impacts your body. Lists and things to do that make you happy. But what I wrote there is you can be happy, not do happy. Because when we make lists of things to do to be happy, what we can do is get stuck in the list. But what I sometimes find is we're like, I can't remember what makes me happy. So make lists of things that we really remember: laughing, hanging out with friends, trying ice skating, whatever it is. And then start bringing in things that make you happy. Because that laughter, that's peace, that rest connects you to spirit. All of your senses. Challenging yourself. Not challenge as in judging, but challenging yourself, pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, builds your trust in yourself. Me doing this thing, building trust in myself for sure. Trusting, surrendering, slowing down. We believe there's not enough time, not enough money. And I've seen myself do it with my kids so often. Hurry, guys, we've got to get to school. Come on, why must it take 15 minutes to put your shoes on? But we ignore the whole process of assimilation that's going on in those 15 minutes, the beautiful world that they've created and they're exploring. I'm not saying that we all can just sit there and be very chilled while they take 15 minutes to put their shoes on, but I've realized that since childhood, we've been told there's not enough time. And that brings us into a spirit of lack, into a feeling of lack. And that is disconnect and disconnect. So slowing down for the things that are important. Realizing we're human beings, not human doings. Healing, it's important to heal. Reconnect, because the healing, my practice used to be called unpacking minds, and I still use it a lot. But I believe it's like I use it because we're unpacking the lies that keep us distant. So healing is not about fixing because you're broken, but it's about healing those hurts so that you can feel safer with yourself and with your body and with your potential, with your skills and with your spirit. Reconnecting with our body, starting that conversation between our body and our desires, praying, praise, however you find it. What I find beautiful is the Gottmans, where I studied the Gottmans level 1 and 2 for my couples. And even though he's Jewish, he says that for him, what it struck him was when you praise God, it's not because God needs an ego boost. It's because in our praise, we get reminded of how powerful he is. Music, dance, fellowship, these are all just a few ways, but these are powerful ways to just bring us back out of this space and into a fullness of being. Check if there's messages. I really love this. The wonderful thing about prayer is that you leave a world of not being able to do something and enter God's realm where everything is possible. That just reaffirms that it's not about the how. Go with what you want. Keep feeling what you want, imagining it possible, enjoying the build up to it, and leave the how to him. If you guys are up for it, I would like you all to close your eyes and just for a moment, put your hand on your heart. I want you to take a nice deep breath. Noticing that every time you take a nice big breath, it fills you up. And every time you exhale, you don't have to work at it. You don't have to try. Just automatically releases. Your body's so good at letting go what it doesn't need. When you inhale, I just want you to notice your feet. You don't have to do anything. Just bring your awareness to your feet. If there's anything tight, you can soften it. Your ankles, your calves, your knees. You can bring your breath all the way to those places if you want, to your thighs, your hips, your stomach, just softening it as you go, bringing awareness to it. And all we're doing here is just bringing awareness to our body. We're going to do it again tomorrow night, but it's so important that we don't just stay in our head, that we allow our body to participate. Bring awareness to your arms, your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. You might find some tension in your tongue or your jaw, your face, and just softening it all as we go through our body. And if you want to, you can spend a moment and ask yourself, what does my spirit know to be true about me? You might hear something, you might see something, you might feel something, something might shift in you. Nothing might happen. There's no wrong. This is just the start of a conversation, a welcoming of conversation, a permission to go beyond our minds. Whenever you're ready, just to bring your awareness back to yourself, to the present moment. Before you open your eyes, I just want you again to thank yourself for being here. Taking the time, dedicating this time to you and to your growth. I thank you, and I would love you to thank you too. And then when you're ready, but only when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I don't think I've said everything that was on my list, but I think I got to the most important parts. I really wanted to just end it with, again, emphasizing we are spirit first. The body and the soul, we're body and mind is compatible for spirit living. My husband has the Samsung phone. I like Apple. My SIM card is not compatible in his phone. It won't work. But our bodies are soul compatible. They're spirit compatible. We are made for living in these dimensions of spirit awareness. And our mind isn't a punishment. It's powerful. But if we start with a spirit, everything else falls into place. What we tend to do is try and fit spirit in, or fit exercise and body work in. Whereas if we start with our spirit and start with knowing who we are, and we start the day from that space, everything else falls into place. Chat. Oh, thank you all. Thank you so, so, so much. Do you have any questions about any of the topics, anything that you want to ask. When I made it in time. You're welcome to put your microphones off mute, have a conversation. If you don't want to chat in the chats, we can discuss. If there's any questions, I'm happy to stay. Whoever needs to go, hungry teenagers and all the rest and kids, you're welcome to go. Thank you for being here. And I really look forward to tomorrow where we get to explore our body. I'm really passionate about our bodies and what intimate lovers our bodies are and how much it's good for us. Bye. I'm going to stay on. If anybody has questions that they want to ask and anybody else that wants to go is welcome. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, thank you, Catherine. You're welcome to unmute if any of you want to ask any questions or wanted to go deeper on anything that I spoke about. Oh. Thanks, Catherine. It was so funny how I was preparing this talk and then I was reading it to my dad and I was saying to him, and I hope I quote you enough in here because there's so much of what you say in what I share.
I was just curious, in you talking about the how, there is such a demand for that, you know, and
oh, you've frozen a bit. I don't know if you can still. You're all frozen. Oh my goodness. Hang on a second. My internet just froze. I am so sorry.
okay.
All I heard was, I'm curious about the how, and then it just shut out and I was like, oh no.
No, I was just saying when there is such a demand for society, what success would look like, the how seems to be a big thing. So how would you help those who are wanting to be successful but want to just be and not be focused on the how? How do you balance those two inner workings?
It's such a beautiful process because when we focus on what we want, it's like, let's say to be successful, you want to, it could be so many different things. It could be amount of followers, it could be your career, it could be having a really nice house that you don't have to work and you can be home with the kids, whatever it is. But when we're focusing on this is my desire, we're talking soul language, and we can focus on how good it would feel to have that and what we want from it. And then we'll get inspired action. It's not about like sitting back and not doing anything, but I find what we tend to do is, okay, I want that, so I better do this, and I'm going to follow society's rules. And what I find is, if we're living in a generation now, if I look at like Instagram and TikTok and all these people, they're multi-millionaires and they're teenagers. And they had one or two things that went viral, where other people have been slaving away, working 80 hours a week, and they're barely making it meet. And that for me is not showing like failure, it's showing the rules don't work. Mm-hmm. How we think we're going to get there aren't working. So when we go into, okay, this is what I really desire, and I trust you, Lord, and I know that if I desire this, so do you. How awesome is that? And then I follow like the rules about doing these masterminds is to have like the courses I've done and the training, everything is have content all the time, talk about it all the time, share I didn't feel any inspiration. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I was told to make this masterclass and I've had zero inspiration, but I'm not going to force something out, because that's not like going against my own rules. It doesn't need to make sense, because he's like, I often picture it as a puzzle. When you're building a puzzle and there could be this blue piece, like my brothers and I over December, they were all visiting and we had this 5,000 piece puzzle, but there was blue mountains, there were blue clouds, there was blue sky, there was blue water. But we can so often look at this blue and go, it must go here. I'm sure it goes here. Where God has the full puzzle in mind. He's like, nope, it's not that blue. I'm going to use it, but later. Just like my degrees and the things that I did and the different courses and the studies. And I'm like, why did I study this? This is where I wanted to go. But they all work in for the better for this. But if I stuck to it, this is what I thought I had to study, so I better do this, we get trapped there.
Yeah.
For me, life is all about the experience. God desires to experience life through us. We've got all these senses to enjoy life through. And there isn't a mistake. There isn't a wrong. He's not going, oh, crap, she did that. He's just going, okay, well, that's going to be an interesting road. Let's try and see where this one goes.
Yeah.
And the how just stops us from enjoying the ride. It gets us too focused on planning. You know, the one post I did write was, the more control we need, the less we trust ourselves. Like, I better plan this, and 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 I better make sure. I've tried that way. It doesn't work out that way. I exhausted myself. And I wasn't fulfilled in those aspects. But when we go, okay, this is what I really want. That doesn't mean, like for this course, I mean, I sat most of this weekend till 2 a.m. working on it, not out of sweat though, out of just like, wow, like I can't wait, I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this. So not that you just sit back and do nothing, but when the inspiration hits, that you write that, like, okay. And that's why, you know, your thing can go viral, or you can pick up a diamond, or, you know, you can be bumped up in the first class and you're flying somewhere that you barely scraped enough money to get in there. As soon as you open the door for what if. But when we get on the how, we make it very small.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
No, awesome. I'm glad.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You're really wonderful to listen to. So.
Awesome. I'm so glad. I'm really, really happy. It makes my heart super happy.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody else? I really want to give whatever wisdom I have to share. Thank you, Cindy. Well, if there are no more questions, oh, bye, donkey. Thank you. And I wish you all the most beautiful evening or afternoon in the USA. I'm going to hang on just for a minute in case somebody wanted to ask. I don't know if you were hanging around because anybody wanted to ask. Groot plesier. Hoe gaan dit met jou? Is jy nog hierso? Kan jy my hoor? Ek gaan stop record.